What is up, guys? It's Miggy, Miggy, and welcome to another episode of Random Rambling. And I know it's been a hot minute, but this time we're talking about one of our passions, esports. Specifically, esports' biggest hurdle, which is sustainability. I know it's a pretty controversial topic, or it's a very hot topic right now because the EWC, or the Esports World Cup 2025, just ended. And here are my thoughts and opinion. Again, Random Rambling is unscripted, unedited, but this time we're trying to up the quality by having a bit more bullet points so that you guys could understand or listen to this while we're talking about it. So before we get into the topic of the biggest hurdle, I want to congratulate first Team Falcons. Team Falcons yet again won the overall championship title in the Esports World Cup. And I know it's pretty much talked about actually, but before that, so Team Falcons won this year with Team Liquid, our favorite team. No bias, hashtag no bias right there. Won second place, or they ended up as first runner ups. And much like last year, it was the same thing. Team Falcons won first place, and Team Liquid is the first runner up. And it's been a talked about topic. I'm not sure if you guys have heard about it, but it boiled down to the format. People have been talking about the format of the Esports World Cup, specifically the point system for overall champion. Because this year in Esports World Cup, or EWC 2025, the difference between Team Falcons and Team Liquids in terms of points is 1,000 points. But if you're gonna look at it, majority of the winners, or rather, a lot of the titles, Team Falcons ended up with only one title this year, which is in Valorant. In Overwatch 2, Team Falcons got that title, while they ended up with two first runner-up titles in chess and in Dota 2 specifically. And if you're looking at this, if you guys are not seeing the page right now, Team Liquid actually won 3 titles overall. And though they did win most, if not I believe they have the most titles, or most most championship titles. They did not secure that overall championships. So it became a conversation because Team Falcons, though they did only have one championship title and 2 second place titles, they still won overall championship because they had the most esports teams representing or playing in different esports titles. So it became a conversation because is overall champions for the most winningest team, which is Team Liquid, or the ones who had the most participation, which is Team Falcons. So what are your thoughts, guys? Let me know down in the comments if you think that this is a pretty fair Esports World Cup point system, because you could say that it is the Esports World Cup. So the more teams you have representing your organization, you should be the one winning overall championship. Or are you guys on the side of Team Liquid, whereas the winningest team should be the one getting the title? Again, Esports World Cup, the best of the best. So the organization with the most titles should win Esports World Cup. So again, these are my thoughts and opinion regarding that matter. I want to hear from you guys too. So if you have any thoughts and opinions about it, feel free to comment them down below. And now we're heading back to our main title, or main topic for this random rambling episode, which is esports' biggest hurdle, which is sustainability. My thoughts, my opinions, unfiltered, unscripted. So I wanted to talk about this because esports is a passion of mine, and a lot of people are saying, or there have been a lot of talks about it being not taken seriously. There's so many big tournaments, a lot of money is being put into the industry, but still people narrow it down to talking about it as if it's just, a game. It's child's play. It's not a sport, or whatever it is. It's not a viable career path. But I believe that these opinions actually boil down or circulate one overarching topic, which is industry sustainability. Because much like other similar ones, specifically traditional sports, we share a very similar business model or very similar practice to it to a point. But there is still discrepancies and differences between us versus the traditional sports organizations or the traditional sport industry. And I feel like the three areas where we differ or what's preventing us in terms of sustainability would be in the financially speaking, so the business aspect of esports, sustainability in players. We'll get to that in a bit. I'll explain that later on. And sustainability in esports titles. So I want to preface this or I want to start this topic with talking about the most, if you're talking to someone who doesn't understand esports or doesn't understand the games in the esports industry or in this game esports titles, you're going to talk about financial sustainability. Because, yes, I know esports World Cup, they had a prize pool of 62.5 million US dollars 2024, and it only got bigger this year, looking at a whopping 70.450 million US dollars. So what does that mean? Like what about it? Because it seems like there's a lot of money in esports, right? You're not seeing the overarching picture because I did mention sustainability. So how long can a club or an organization sustain this kind of prize pool? Because again, esports is not just the teams playing the games, but rather there's also the back end. Having that one esports World Cup, having that one big paycheck will not sustain a whole organization's sustainability or their running operations for 1 year. Because as easy as that, you're not just paying the teams, you're paying the coaches, you're paying the back end, you're paying the organizations, orgs, and everything to join these kinds of tournaments. So one big paycheck is not gonna actually sustain whoever wins the title. But again, you might be arguing, but then there's TI, the international, one of the biggest or one of the moments when people started realizing that there's money in esports. If you look at it now, if you are just listening to me talk, I'm now showing the TI prize pool. So, what does that mean? The prize pool is basically a prize pool is not whatever winnings the number one team gets, but rather it is split amongst the top 8, usually top 8, top 16, depending on how big the prize pool is or depending on the tournament format. But we saw a big decrease or decline because of the whole battle pass. There's no more battle pass in recent times, I believe. And if we're looking at this table, TI 2021 had the biggest prize pool, and I believe it's still the biggest prize pool in the whole one tournament esports title experience, where they had the prize pool of 40 million US dollars. And from there was a steady decline from 40 million. The next prize pool was at 18.9 million US dollars, and it just went down even further. TI 2023 at 3.3 million dollars. So what do we say? What are we looking at here? There's a trend that it's no longer sustainable. People were not spending the same amount of money they were during TI 2021 or the pandemic era, because people suddenly got back to their real lives. They had work, they started having expenses, and they didn't have their checks or their bonuses for pandemic sustainability. But now that, real life happened again, people are talking about it. People are saying that they don't have time to play games anymore because everyone's returning back to the office. Of course, the player base that actually had the money to shell out for these things are the working class. And 18.9 million to 3.3, and now this year 2,157,946 US dollars is the prize pool for TI 2025. And people said that it was a Valve thing, maybe it's a theory, maybe it's allegations, but they mentioned that It's them trying to control the prize pool as to not overreach when it comes to these things. Because what they thought after the $40 million prize pool, it was just gonna go higher and higher. But we have to understand that money is limited. People will not have the same amount of money every single year. And you have to understand that player bases, fan bases also tend to change because your audience get older. They have other responsibilities, they have other costs, especially pandemic versus post-pandemic time. And from there, you could see that financially speaking, you can't live on the prize pools alone now. And yes, it helps that there's the eSports World Cup initiative where they also they have this access called the club program wherein they will help you sustain your organization all throughout and in hopes to, revive or further improve the esports industry scene. And let's just say sometimes it's not about the money because actually most times it's about the money, but then you have to understand that there's a certain degree where money it reaches a ceiling because we're looking at growth and growth is never it's infinite, but money is not. So you have to really understand where the ceiling is, the price ceiling is, and all those key concepts. I'm not a financial advisor, so I could only give you guys these things, these ideas in layman's terms. But I want to show you guys a specific example wherein the sustainability of esports is very obvious because, as I mentioned, you guys are seeing these organizations winning these kinds of monies. But what if you're not a tier 1 or a division 1 esports team? Where are you going to be getting that funding? Because as much as you want to, grow the esports industry by becoming a team, by developing talent, money will not always come to you if you don't win titles, if you don't win tournaments. And that's a sad reality because if we're looking at it, like right now, we're going to be transitioning a bit to players, but I want to show you guys this article where a specific team, Nouns, disbanded their roster and left Dota 2. As you saw, there was $1 million prize pool. There was so much money put into Dota 2. But then it just wasn't enough because Nouns, though they were performing well, they were not winning titles. They weren't winning championships. So that means they don't get prize money. So the sponsors will go away because they don't feel like they're getting an ROI or a return in their investments. And they actually had a really good quote here where Dota 2 demands as much as it rewards, both in terms of competition and commercial viability. Our love for Dota 2 remains unchanged, and with the right partner, we are open to returning to the scene, once again aiming to be North America's best representatives. So from there, just like that, they talked about the financial instability of owning a team. Yes, there's big money involved in esports or in Dota 2 specifically. But then they realized that since the team wasn't winning championships, it was actually more of a loss for them. And as much as they want to stay in the scene, as it's quoted here, it's really about the money because as much as passion will fuel our industry, people still have to eat. People have to make money. People have to spend money to make money, and it just so happens they were spending more than what they were making. And I want to go to that actually. I want to use that as a segue to talk about sustainability in players. Because right now people are talking about mental health, physical health, esports players are not athletes or they're just gamers. But then I want to put it right here, my thoughts and opinions. Esports athletes or esports players, whatever you want to call them, gamers, they're athletes because whatever they do, it takes mental skill and physical skill as well. And this is coming from a traditional sports guy, a traditional sports athlete, as I've been a competitor in multiple combat sports specifically, and I still see them, though I like that. It's complete opposite, right? I'm in the esports industry, but the industry or space I come from was from combat sports. Very contact, very physical. And I really want to say that esports athletes are athletes because of the demanding things they have to do. Esports athletes are athletes because of they have to make time for training, they have to make time for all these things to put in the work to be, so I believe they should be called athletes. And very different from traditional sports actually. That's why I want to talk about sustainability in players is because unlike traditional sports where you have at least you have like 5 to 10 good years, maybe 15 if you're lucky, because there are some representatives we have who in traditional sports who started around like early 20s and then they are still competitive, maybe around until 30s, in their mid 30s or late 30s. And we're not, esports players are not as blessed when it comes to that. Maybe 5 years, 10 years would be 5 years would be something good, maybe. But there are anomalies like the GOAT of League of Legends, Faker, shout out Faker, who just survives and just gets better. He ages like fine wine. His mechanics, though people keep comparing him to the young bloods, it's still him they have to face. It's still him who is the industry standard in terms of League of Legends. That is why he is the GOAT of League of Legends. And really, I want to talk about that because the ages now, specifically actually, they're kids. The new players, the new bloods of the esports space, the players, these athletes, they're children. Like, teenagers, fine. If you want to be a bit more technical about it, they're teenagers. You have players as young as 15 years old playing in the pro circuits. And honestly, that's why I think sustainability is going to be an issue with the players, because after 15 years, as if you started at 15 years and you're, let's say you have an above average to a bit more than average playing career, you would have at least 5 years. And by then you'd be 20. And when you're 20, that's usually when life begins. This is when you start facing the real world, because in terms of academics or the academe, you would have just graduated college and you start looking for real life work. And this is a big thing for players because they spent their teenage years where they could have used it for learning and education to make money early, because some players need it, because we know the state of like a lot of third world countries or Southeast Asian countries where this is their last hope, wherein this is how they're able to bring their family out of poverty. And it's a very noble thing to do, honestly. And these players really go about money differently because they're teenagers. They have no concept of savings, because they get, heck, some of them in, I believe in other countries, you need to be 18 to actually have access to your finances. And having money early on and not knowing what to do with it will really affect your future, because if you aren't investing properly, like a lot of the ex-pro athletes, they would mention that it was a lot harder to deal with the whole having money early because they didn't know what to do about it. They didn't know how to invest. And with your peak being so small, like you have, let's say if you started at 15, it's by your third year, more or less, that's when you reach your peak. So you're at 18. And if you don't perform well at your peak, you have to understand that you need to start making money or thinking about your future more, because you're not going to be playing these games forever. And that takes a toll on these players, mentally speaking. So that's why a lot of them feel burnt out, because they want to capitalize on their prime or capitalize on their best, because their time in the esports scene is very limited. And as young as they are, that it just brings about the whole other idea of sustainability, wherein turnovers exist, because it's not like every year once a pro player retires, another one will take his place, because even then you still have to consider growing. You have to train these athletes before they could replace the veterans that have retired. And that's why I believe sustainability in esports, or sustainability in the player scene, the pro player scene, is one of the things we have to address when it comes to esports, because they start young, their careers are very short, and the shortness of these careers are actually due to, it's a mental thing, I'd say, or physical fatigue, because we have had athletes or pro players take breaks because of mental concerns, because they feel burnt out. And this happens because of the high stress situations they're put in, because their life, their career is not as long as traditional sports athletes have it, because they feel like they have to go twice as hard because their careers are twice as short, and it takes a toll on them, and that's why it's not as sustainable. So maybe there are best practices we have to follow when it comes to these things. But yeah, that is my thoughts on sustainability on players, and that is why I want to use that as a segue, because I mentioned that these players' careers are so short, because if you enter the market early or you enter the market late, the game you might be practicing or training for will suddenly be phased out, because there is this concept of, unlike traditional sports, sorry, esports titles could have a sequel to them. So you aren't hearing basketball 2, you aren't hearing volleyball 2, because there are because everyone could play these games on the go, on the fly, on the PC and everything. Games tend to become more stagnant, unlike traditional sports wherein you have to be there physically. Tournaments are not left and right. So there's a lot more time to train around the rules and everything. And even then, because of these patch notes and changes and technology advancing, esports titles also change with the times. And let's say you got into CSGO, for example, you got into CSGO later on, like a few months before CS2 came out. Yes, it's more or less the same engine, but it's a different gaming title on its own. So right then, you were learning a game. It took you years before you got scouted, and then suddenly CS2 comes out, Counter Strike 2 comes out, and you have to learn a whole new game, quote unquote new game, because that's what's in now. That's what everyone's gonna be playing. Every tournament's gonna be playing Counter Strike 2, and just like that, all you've worked hard on, all the effort you put into training those, yeah, you could bring some of the soft skills with you, but because of the ever-changing nature of things, of gaming titles, sustainability is pretty hard, because that's why I'd say it connects to players and their short careers, because one patch could suddenly nerf you, one patch will suddenly affect how you play, and you have to learn the game all over again. This is true, very true, for a lot of the MOBA titles like Dota 2, Mobile Legends, League of Legends, because suddenly one patch will change or go against the way you play, because in MOBA games you have a role to play. Suddenly one meta will change it, and so maybe the what's in now, or what's meta, is not what you're used to playing, thus affecting your gameplay, thus affecting your career. And we all know that esports titles they come and they go. The games that were esports back then, or like years ago, are not what being played now. Specifically, like fighting games, you have your Tekken. Not everyone was playing Tekken 3, Tekken 4, Tekken Tag, or Street Fighter 5, Street Fighter 4, and now everyone is playing the quote-unquote updated version of these games. But they're still, though they are in essence the same game, they are sequels to the games, they are the same title. The gameplay, change, and you really have to learn these new games as they go. And that's why I feel like sustainability in esports is affected by this, because if you're an investor, you want to be sure that what's gonna change, or these changes, will be positive, or they will be for your benefit. Because when new games came out, for example, Counter Strike 2 versus CS:GO, people did not like Counter-Strike 2. They felt like it was rushed. They had very varying opinions on it, and it affected the pro circuit. It affected the scene because there were players transitioning to different games, different titles because of this. And it really affects the whole esports industry because as much as you want to keep it alive, one bad title or one bad review or bad experience with certain titles will affect the whole business model or sustainability of the esports scene. And honestly, like, I feel sustainability is the best word to encapsulate these ideas because it's happened. A lot of people have been there during what they call the passion era where no one was making anything and they were just pursuing esports as a career because they love the idea. But we live in the real world, and honestly, I feel like esports' biggest hurdle of sustainability is something that we could address, and it's just a matter of time. And I feel like once we address the sustainability concerns and issues of esports, it will more or less legitimize the esports industry as a financially stable or profitable space. Therefore, ergo affecting and making a lot of our players, a lot of the people working in the industry look more professional. And again, these are just my thoughts and opinions about sustainability in esports. And I want to hear you guys. I want to know what you guys' thoughts about what is esports' biggest hurdle, and if you guys agree with me that if it's sustainability, what are your thoughts and opinions on it? I want to hear you guys in the comments down below. And again, it's Miggy, Miggy, and this was an episode of Random Rambling. And I will catch you guys next time.